Thank you to all our families for joining us. And I'll pass it along to you so we can get right into it.
All right, perfect. All right, guys. Today we're going to be going over a lot of stuff. That being said, let's start today's presentation. Once again, my name is Ed from Principia Prep. I've been in the world of college, pretty much everything, admissions, financial aid, so on and so forth, for a little bit over 24 years now. So any questions you guys have, once again, just ask away. That being said, let's start today's presentation by giving you guys a quick little outline of what we're going to talk about. We're obviously going to talk about financial aid and admission stuff, as well as we're going to be discussing with you guys SAT, ACT optional situation, the things happening this year, changes to Fafsa Form and financial aid forms, as well as next year's financial aid forms as well. The deadlines, the due dates, avoiding scams, frauds, different financial aid resources, as well as loan opportunities and where to look for loans when you guys are looking to help pay for college. That being said, let's jump right into it by first talking about, we here at Principia started a scholarship fund. It's called the James Russo Memorial Scholarship. This year's senior class of 21-22, we're looking to give away $15,000. We've already are on track basically to get to the $10,000 level based on all the parents helping out and the families and the high schools and everybody else with the views on the YouTube channel. So let me explain to you guys the two ways to help out with the scholarship fund. Now, if you guys go to YouTube, this is what our YouTube channel looks like basically. So all you have to do is just go to YouTube, type my name in, and then you get basically our channel. Now, there's two ways of help here. Number one, you guys watch in the left-hand corner there, you see the James Russo Memorial Scholarship video explains to you how to apply for the scholarship. The second way you guys can help us is by going on the YouTube channel and watching as many videos as possible. We are on track for 10,000, but I'd love to hit the 15 grand. That being said, let's jump right into all the different stuff happening in the world of financial aid. Now, right off the bat, there's a lot of changes happening. One of the first changes that happened was during the pandemic, the U.S. Department of Education, Congress basically, gave the colleges hundreds of millions of dollars to basically be able to help out the students during the pandemic. So this year's freshman class of college, 21-22, got a lot of money. But most colleges, a lot of colleges still have a ton of money left because most of them didn't realize, no one really realized, that the pandemic was going to send the stock market straight down and then right back up. So most of them have all their endowment funds they had pre-pandemic and even more because the stock market's at all-time highs, as well as all this government money. So what I'm telling a lot of parents this year to do is I'm definitely looking to appeal any scholarship money I'm getting from any college to try to get more aid out of them. That's the goal here, because a lot of colleges have a ton of money on hand. Second big thing that happened this year, obviously because of the pandemic, all interest rates on all student loans, all the federal loans, the parent loans, the PLUS loans, the federal direct loans, the Stafford loans, the Perkins loans, all these loans dropped down to 0 interest rates. That's going to be going away on February 1st. Now, before February 1st, I've been telling every parent that you should be aggressively paying down your loans. The reason you should be paying down your loans aggressively is because if there is loan forgiveness, that'd be a great thing for a lot of people, but you can't count on it. Maybe it comes through, maybe it doesn't. But the best case scenario right now is to pay down aggressively because the interest rates right now are at 0. So any payment you send to the federal government for student or parent loans automatically takes that amount right off the loan, which is a huge benefit for you guys. That being said, in addition to all this, the U.S. Department of Education came out about a month and a half ago and said, if you were receiving unemployment in 2020 or 2021, you can go back to the financial aid office and do a financial aid appeal and have the colleges back out your unemployment the same way the IRS is backing out the first $10,200 of unemployment you get. It's not being taxed. The financial aid offices now have the discretion, basically the power based on the U.S. Department of Education to also back that money out when considering you guys for financial aid consideration, which is obviously a big deal if you guys couldn't work in 2020 and all you had was unemployment. It basically means you can have the financial aid office take all your unemployment off your financial aid forms, which is a big deal because that makes it you can only pay 0 towards the cost of college, making you fully eligible for federal aid, state aid, and college aid. So obviously this is a lot of money involved here if you're getting unemployment. That being said, I already know that's a lot of stuff already, but that's just this year's changes. Starting next year, there's another handful of changes coming in. Now, right off the bat, the Fafsa form this year has had major changes as far as they redid the whole website. Now, there's been good stuff about that, and there's been bad stuff. There's a lot of errors and issues they fixed from last year, but one of the biggest problems, unfortunately, is the site keeps crashing. There are some issues, but I've been telling parents, don't rush to get the forms in. Take your time. You have plenty of time for senior parents to get these forms in. Starting next year, though, let me explain some big changes happening for next year's FAFSA, not this year's, next year's. which obviously includes the seniors, because you guys are filling out the forms every single year your student's in school, as well as the juniors, you're on the call today, for next year. Starting next year, the FAFSA is shrinking from 100 questions down to roughly around 40 to 45 questions. They're also getting rid of 3 major things that help families out, unfortunately. Number one, they're getting rid of the multiple student discount. What typically happens if you had 2 students going off to college and you guys fill out the financial aid forms, the FAFSA form, let's say you filled it out and you had 1 student going off to college, and the FAFSA said you could pay for that 1 student $20,000. What typically would happen if you had 2 students, you're still paying the $20,000. Only difference is divided between the 2 of them. So you're supposed to be paying $10,000 for student 1 and $10,000 for student 2, according to the FAFSA, which means you make more space for financial aid eligibility at each of the colleges your students are going to. They're going to get rid of that on the FAFSA form starting next academic year. Now, I know it's a big deal. It's been in the news. A lot of parents are wondering, if we have multiple students going to college, it's going to be a big hindrance, because when they change everything, if you're supposed to pay $20 for 1 student, you're paying $20 for a second student, $20 for the third student, and so on and so forth. So there's no discount anymore from the federal side. But I've been telling parents not to worry about it. I have a slide just for this, not to worry right now, because it doesn't actually affect almost anyone, to be honest with you. And you'll understand why in a moment. Second big change that's happening is that on the FAFSA form, as of this year and going back, you are allowed to, when you indicated the parent was divorced or separated, to technically choose which of the 2 parents' information you wanted to put on the FAFSA form. Because the form asks you this year, and had asked in the past, who does a student live with 51% of the time or more, which is obviously a gray area, because depending on how you share the student, go back and forth, 50-50 custody, you can basically choose which parent's information you want to put on the form. And most parents would put the parent that has the lesser income to basically give you guys more financial assistance. Starting next year, you guys are not able to do that anymore. Starting on October 1st of 2022's FAFSA, you must use the parent who claims the student on the FAFSA form. That's who must be used as far as the income. Now, the way it works is this year you can still choose. So it doesn't matter who claimed the student on the 2020 taxes. But for 21 taxes, which are used next year for FAFSA, you have to use the parent who claims the student. So if you guys go back and forth, some parents are divorced, go back and forth exchanging the student for tax purposes, you might want to sit down and figure out, what should we be doing over the next 3 years? Because for the next 3 years, tax-wise, 21, 22, and 23 taxes, you'll be using those taxes for financial aid consideration. All that being said, those are the big ones that most people understand. The third big change that most people don't talk about, but it is a very big change, is that the FAFSA is reducing the asset protection allowance on the parents from $20,000 down to $10,000. I know probably nobody has any idea what I'm talking about, which is fine. I have a slide just to explain this in further detail, so it kind of comes home and you understand what I mean by this, obviously. Now, that being said, let's jump right into one thing that most families don't realize is that you guys have been filling out financial aid questions even before the financial aid forms were available. Now, when it comes to the financial aid forms, you guys need to realize that every application for admissions, the Common App, the Coalition, Apply Web, everything, Rutgers application, they will all ask you some form of the question down below here in the screen here. You see in light blue where it says, do you intend to apply for need-based aid? Now, this question is asked by every college, by the way, now, and a lot of families ask, why is the admissions office asking for a financial aid question? Now, when it comes to this, the reality is, good, bad, or indifferent, the colleges themselves, most of them don't care about this question, to be honest with you. It's a standard question, though, so it must be answered by everyone here. Now, the way it works is, with all this information, with everything happening in the world, everyone wonders, well, if we indicate, yes, we're looking for need-based financial aid, are they going to use this against us for admissions? And the answer is no. Most schools are not going to use it against you. And if you want to find out if the school does use it as part of the criteria, because now this is a standard question for everyone, what you guys need to do is very simple. Just call the school's financial aid office and ask them, are you need aware or are you need blind? The schools will tell you if they're need aware or need blind. If the school is need blind, that means they don't care at all if you guys can afford it. So they don't care if you say, yes, I'm looking for financial assistance, or you say no. It's going to have no bearing on you guys getting accepted or not getting accepted. If the school says, yes, we are need aware, that basically means that the school is looking at one of the factors for admissions of you guys, can you afford the college? But it's a very small component, because some parents ask, if we indicate no here, we'll increase our chances of getting accepted, especially to a need-aware school. And the answer is yes, it's going to help you, but it's going to help you a very, very small amount, to be honest with you. Not that much to begin with. That being said, what I always tell parents is if you need financial help, click yes. Indicate yes, you're looking for financial assistance, because if you need financial assistance, some colleges have come out and said, if you click no here, some colleges have come out and said in the last 4 or 5 years, if you don't say yes here, we will not allow you to apply for financial aid for 2 years. About a handful of schools came out last year, need-to-wear schools, and said, if you don't say yes here, we will not allow you to apply for financial aid for 4 years. So obviously it's a big deal. If you say no here and you need help, then you're obviously in some cases going to be out of luck because they won't let you apply for aid. So if you need assistance, always say yes here. If you're uncertain if you need assistance, very simple. Do the school's net price calculator. The net price calculator, I'm going to explain what it is. It's basically a very important term you should all write down. I have a slide just for that. It's very important typically also for not just the need-to-wear schools, but also for the early decision students, the restricted early action students as well. All these students are kind of thinking about, should I get locked in or semi-locked into a school? These things are very important to you guys. So obviously I'm going to be going through what the net price calculator is in a few slides down the road here. But first, let's talk about building the college list. Now, when you guys build the college list, most families look at the building the college list from one way, but there are really 3 different ways of building a college list. There's the admissions way, the financial aid way, and a combination of both. When you're building a college list, typically most students have the reach college, the dream school they all want to go to at the top of the list. Then they have in the middle the target school, which some people consider kind of like the fallback or secondary choice, kind of like a 50-50 chance of getting in. Good chance of getting in, but not guaranteed situation. At the bottom, you have the safety schools, which are typically in most cases like the fallback where most students don't end up going to. That being said, that's the admissions way of looking at it. Now, the financial aid way of looking at building a list is basically the complete opposite. The safety schools are key for you guys because the safety schools provide, essentially, you're going to be guaranteed getting in. So these schools very likely will be the ones that offer you high scholarship amounts. So first thing you want to do with all your safety schools is contact the admissions office and or do their net price calculator, because the net price calculator allows you guys to figure out if these schools can provide you scholarship money. So if you talk to admissions or you do the net price calculator, a lot of these schools will show you if they're able to give you scholarship money. And the reason you want to get scholarship money from the safety school is very simple. Number one, you want to use the safety school, whatever scholarship they give you, you want to increase it if you can. Let me explain to you what I mean by increase it if you can. Let's say you're talking to an admissions officer or you've done a net price calculator and you figure out that your student, based on their academics, and a lot of these admissions officers, by the way, do Zoom meetings where you can ask them these kind of questions about basically saying, this is my student's GPA, this is their test score, what do you think scholarship-wise? And most of them will tell you right over the phone or right over the Zoom what they can give you guys if you come to that school based on your metrics. So the first thing you want to do basically here is ask the admissions office, are we scholarship eligible at your college? That's number one question. If we're not, how do we become scholarship eligible? Do you count senior year grades? Do you stop counting grades in junior year? Would you count any SATs that we take later on? You want to make sure whatever you can do to maximize that scholarship, or at least get a scholarship for a safety school if you don't already have one in place. Second thing you want to do with the admissions office is ask them, whatever scholarship we are eligible for, if we are eligible for one right now, are we at the maximum? Most schools will tell you, they'll give you basically a range. So let's say you're eligible for the dean scholarship based on your student's academics. The dean is $5,000 to $8,000. And your next question should always be, what's above the dean scholarship? Is it possible for us to get there? The reason you want to maximize the scholarships right before basically the admissions part of this whole thing stops, which is essentially May 1st of senior year, the reason you're trying to maximize the scholarship is very simple. It's because you guys want to make sure you have the maximum amount of money to be able to do two things. Number one, if you fall back and go to a safety school, you have the max amount of money, because when your student goes to that college, whatever college is giving them a scholarship, they do not increase the scholarship once your student's in school. So even if they make the dean's list, even if they have 4.0 or a 4.0 scale, they're still not going to increase the scholarships. You want to maximize the scholarship for the safety schools just in case you end up going there. And number two, you want to use the safety schools as essentially a leveraging tool, a bargaining chip to leverage money out of the target and reach colleges. That's why you want as high as possible from the safety schools as far as scholarship money is concerned. That's the way to think about it. You're maximizing the scholarship money for the safety schools as a fallback, as well as an opportunity to use as leverage. That's what I tell parents all the time, think of the safety schools not as a place you're making going, but as a bargaining chip, because most students don't go to their safety schools, but it's good to have the maximum amount of money at that level. And also, one other thing before I move on, you always contact the admissions office when you're dealing with scholarships or appealing or negotiating scholarships of any kind or asking about information about scholarships, because of the fact that the admissions office is the one that handles all scholarship money, not the financial aid office. The financial aid office has nothing to do with scholarship money. Now, that being said, let's talk about the SAT, ACT situation that we all find ourselves in. Now, there's been good and bad about the SAT, ACT situation when it comes to you guys not having to send test scores in, or you guys not having to have so much stress about the SAT. And if you're wondering or thinking about, as a parent or student here watching, how can I build an SAT, ACT only list? Very simple. Down below, right there, fairtest.org. That website there is where you guys can go to basically get a list of every SAT, ACT optional college out there. That list right there will give you them in alphabetical order. So it's a great website to go to, a free website. Now, when it comes to the SAT, ACT lists of schools, one of the benefits, obviously, is for you guys is if you don't score well on the SAT, ACT, you don't have to send it. And many schools are not using this against you for scholarship consideration, which is obviously a big deal. Now, the downside, unfortunately, to the SAT, ACT optional schools is that it opens up the floodgates. So it makes admissions that much more competitive. So the reality is, good, bad, or indifferent, if you guys are looking to go SAT, ACT optional, there is a lot more as far as it comes to competition on the list. So one thing I tell all students that are looking to go SAT, ACT optional is get your applications in early as possible. So if your application early action deadline is November 1st, I want them in like today or tomorrow. If it's November 15th, I want them in maybe 2 or 3 days before the end of October. Your goal is not to be basically attached to the other tens of thousands of applications coming in at the last kind of minute kind of thing. I understand if you're still working on stuff and essays and so on and so forth, but you do not want to delay. For me, being late does not mean November 2nd for November 1st deadline. It basically means like October 30th for November 1st deadline. You want to be as early as possible with these applications, okay? Now, when it comes to the college cost, let's start talking about that. The college cost, good, bad, or indifferent, as you'll notice, nationwide is completely different from what it is here in the tri-state area. Good, bad, or indifferent, nationwide college costs range between $14,000 to $30,000 for a public school. Here in the tri-state area, basically the whole Northeast, our public school costs typically range from 25 to 50% higher than these numbers. On the private side, we're also in that range where, unfortunately, our private schools are way over $50,000 in some cases to start off with, and sometimes veer closer to the $70,000, $75,000 range. And then when you're talking about the higher elite colleges, the private universities, so on and so forth, in many cases, you guys are talking about colleges that cost well over $80,000. Now, when it comes to the colleges and everything else, one thing I tell the families all the time is never look at the sticker price of a college and determine that you can't afford it, so you shouldn't apply. It's the worst thing you could possibly do. Or the other thing I see parents do, kind of indirectly do, is they tell their student, if the school doesn't cost X amount of dollars, you can't apply. And the student says, okay, I have this budget. I look at a school that costs $85,000. It's not in their budget. I can't apply. The number one error in admissions that I've seen over 24 years, every single year, the same error. You guys look at the numbers, think you can't afford it, and you don't apply. The reality is the schools on the list right here in front of you on the slide, more than half the students attending these colleges pay less than half the sticker price. So the reality is never look at the sticker price and assume you can't afford it. You have to do the homework. And let me explain to you guys how you do the homework. You guys do the homework by first figuring out what financial aid actually means. Now, when it comes to financial aid, what most people don't realize is you guys don't really understand what financial aid means. Financial aid basically means 4 things. It means scholarships, grants, loans, and work programs. And let me explain to you why you guys don't understand what it means. If you go to a financial aid open house, college fair, an admissions presentation of any kind, and you ask anyone from that college, can we get financial aid? And you guys are talking about the financial assistance from that college, and they keep saying, yes, you're going to get financial aid. You keep thinking we're going to get a lot of money and we're fine. This is what's happening. You guys are speaking 2 completely different languages. You're not even on the same planet. And let me explain what I mean. As a financial aid person who's worked in the college, who's been a director, when you say financial aid to me, I think guaranteed loans, guaranteed work programs, maybe scholarship money, maybe grant money. As a parent, I'll switch to parent role. I think of financial aid from a family perspective as grants, scholarships, work programs, and maybe we take the loan. So if everyone understands what I'm saying here, you guys are saying the right words, but you're using them completely incorrectly. The moment you guys talking about financial aid, the first thing you want to say to the person talking to you from that college is, I'm glad we're talking about this, but I want to make sure that we only discuss gift aid. Gift aid is the actual financial aid term for free money. Gift aid means scholarships and grants. They cannot talk loans with you guys, or I guess disguise it within the financial aid conversation, or work programs when you say, I only want to talk about gift aid. That being said, let's talk about how they figure out if you're even eligible for any type of financial aid whatsoever. Right off the bat, there's 3 parts to an equation that you guys see in front of you here that basically determines how much space you have essentially for financial aid consideration of any kind at any college, by the way. Now, when it comes to the financial aid consideration, the first part of this equation, and by the way, this equation is used by every college, from Harvard all the way down to county. Now, the first part is called cost of attendance. You should all write down the term cost of attendance. It's extremely important. Cost of attendance basically means what the college costs for one academic year for your one student going off to that university. I'm going to explain what goes into that in the next slide. Beneath that, you have what's known as the expected family contribution. The expected family contribution is essentially what they think you should be able to pay towards the cost of college based on what you filled out on the financial aid forms. Now, you subtract that out from what the college cost. What's left over is financial need. Financial need is what the college should help you with in scholarships, grants, loans, and work programs. The reason I say should is because there's no guideline, there's no rule saying they have to help you out with anything. Another thing that many parents don't understand properly, because it's not really explained to you guys, is when you guys get the expected family contribution number at the end of the FAFSA form, that number does not mean that's all you're paying. That number means that's the minimum you're going to be paying. In some colleges, that's all you're paying. At other colleges, that's the beginning portion of what you're paying, okay? Once again, I'm going to be going through and explaining to you guys how to figure out if your colleges are generous or not based on net price calculators in a few slides here down the road. But that being said, let's talk about what goes into cost of attendance and why it's so important. When you guys go to any fair, any college, anything, any open house, when you're talking to an admissions officer or financial aid officer, and you ask them what their cost of attendance is, you're going to get a different number than if you were to ask them you would get a different number if you said to them what they cost versus what is your cost of attendance. Let me explain. When you ask a college, what do you cost? They're going to tell you the tuition and room and board cost. When you ask them what's your cost of attendance, they'll tell you the tuition, room and board, book cost, transportation cost, miscellaneous cost, the entirety of the cost of that college. That's why you need to use the term cost of attendance going forward, because it provides you exactly what you guys are looking for, the total cost. To give you an example, the direct cost for a college, tuition and room and board, typically make up 80 to 85% of the college. The indirect costs, which are the fees, the books, the transportation, the laptop, that kind of stuff, makes up 15 to 20%. So obviously that's a big component when you're dealing with the entirety of the college cost. Another example is at some colleges, just the health insurance alone is $4,000 to $5,000 a year. So we're not talking small fees anymore. That's why you need to know and need to use the term cost of attendance when you're trying to find out from them how much they cost, so you have the whole amount, not a partial amount. Even though it's the biggest amount, it's still a partial amount. That being said, let's talk about filling out financial aid forms. Right off the bat, you guys will be filling out 3 different financial aid forms. Now, you really only do 2 of them because a third, you really don't do much of anything. You'll understand why in a moment. The form on the left is called the Fafsa Form. Everyone does the Fafsa Form. No matter what your income is, no matter what your financial situation is, no matter how many properties you have, everyone does the Fafsa Form on the left. If you're not sure why you need to do it, because someone told you to make too much or you're not going to get anything based on the colleges you're looking at, very simple. On the YouTube channel, just go to our YouTube channel, type in Ed Zamora. When you get to the YouTube channel, just type in 7 reasons why everyone does the FAFSA. I have a video explaining why everyone does it no matter what your income situation is. So everyone does the form on the left. Some of you will do the form on the right in addition to the FAFSA form. So let's talk about first the FAFSA form. Now, when it comes to the FAFSA form, down below, right there, fafsa.ed.gov, what you see on your screen right here, is where you guys go to fill out the form. Now, when you're filling out the form, this form is only to be filled out by senior parents. So no juniors or any other underclassmen. You guys aren't doing anything as far as these forms are concerned. So for senior parents, when you guys are filling out the FAFSA form, you're using 2020 taxes. That basically means for senior parents, when you guys go in here, and by the way, when you go in here, when you guys start the entire form itself here, you will need 2 IDs. One ID for the student, one ID for the parent. But before I go into that, because that's the next slide, one thing I want to make sure to mention that everyone understands, when you guys start doing the forms and doing everything you do here, everyone thinks they have to fill in this form as soon as possible. Like October 1st, it became available, and I have to do it the first day. There is no such thing as first come, first serve. Okay? It has not existed since basically back in the days of the GI Bill, which is back in the 60s and 70s. First come, first serve was a reality decades and decades ago. The reality is now, you guys have between October 1st to January 1st, this entire time frame, October 1st to January 1st, to get the form in. Whether you do this form today or November or December, you get the same exact money. Remember, I told you guys in the beginning of the presentation, this site has been crashing every single day. Even today, it took me almost 45 minutes to finish one page on this form, which should only take about 15 seconds. So the form is having major issues because everyone keeps jumping on here and inundating the site and crashing the server. So if you don't need to do this anytime soon, which none of you do, I would wait at least another week before I jumped on here and started doing the form. Now, there is one time that you guys have to do this form early, and that's if you're doing early decision 1. Nothing else. So all the early action people, you guys don't count here. It's only the early decision 1 students that have to get this form in by the early decision 1 deadline. So if your early decision 1 is November 15th, this plus all admissions paperwork must be in by November 15th. Other than that, you have plenty of runway to get this form in. You don't have to do it right now. That being said, once you guys log into this form, it's going to ask you, do you have FSA IDs? The FSA IDs are used to sign into the FAFSA and do a few other things within the form. You need 2 IDs, one student ID, one parent ID. I made a video, as you can see here, a screenshot on the YouTube channel because so many parents were calling and emailing me of having issues with filling out this form and creating the IDs. I just made a step-by-step guide. I think it's 9 minutes long. It's very short. It literally walks you right through obtaining both IDs, one for the student, one for the parent. Student ID to start the form. The parent ID, the ID of the parent, the second ID, used halfway through the form to go here and do what's known as the IRS retrieval. Halfway through the FAFSA, as parents, you can upload your taxes directly from the IRS, but you can only do so if you got that second ID from the FSA ID website. Without it, you cannot upload it. And if you do upload it, the benefit is it makes your FAFSA 99% correct in the eyes of the college, which is what you guys want to do. And at the end of the FAFSA, both IDs are used to sign the form. So it's obviously very important you get to both IDs. That being said, at the end of the FAFSA, or one of the questions that every parent asks, of course, is what counts and what doesn't count. So let's talk about first what doesn't count. Your primary home does not go on here. So the equity in your home goes nowhere on the FAFSA. Second, your retirement accounts, your 401ks, your IRAs, your Roths, your 403bs, those do not go on here as far as the amount you have in those accounts. There is one question on the FAFSA form about retirement. That one question is asking you guys how much you contributed to your retirement account last year, not what you have in there. That's where a lot of parents make the error of putting the whole amount in there. It doesn't go on here anywhere. Now, when it comes to college savings plans, the Coverdales, the UTMAs, the UGMAs, the 529s, the NJ Best, every college savings plan, by the way, the assets go in the parent section of the financial aid forms. The only times they don't go on there, and this is the asterisk basically, is if the grandparent, uncle, aunt, anyone other than the parent set the account up. Then technically it does not go on these forms. It does not count because that person is the principal holder of the asset, not your student. Your student is beneficiary and they have no power over that asset, okay? That being said, let's talk about how they come up with, basically how they figure out for you guys, what your expected family contribution number is. Right here in front of you, you see I have the actual formula, essentially, for figuring out your expected family contribution number. There's 4 parts of this. 2 parts for the student, 2 parts for the parent. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up, going through and explain to you guys how they come up with your expected family contribution. Now, the easiest way to do this is, rather than following me here and trying to do this at home by yourself later on, even if you watch the recording again, the fastest way to getting your expected family contribution number is to go on to College Board. On College Board, they have an EFC calculator. Basically lets you very simply figure out your number within about 5 minutes. So it's super quick. But starting from the bottom and working way up, student assets. Any money in the student's name that they want on the form, they count 20% of. So as an example, let's say your student has $1,000 in a checking account. You put the $1,000 on the financial aid forms. They're going to say, of that $1,000, we want $200 to go towards the cost of college. Part number 2, students' income. Students are allowed to make up to $6,500 before $1 counts. So if your student in 2020 made less than $6,500, even if you put it on this form, it's not going to count. It has no bearing. Once your student makes over $6,500, they want 50 cents on every dollar over $6,500 to go towards the cost of college. Part number 3, parents' assets. As parents, you're giving what's known as an asset protection allowance, a certain amount of money that does not count in the equation. Now, once again, as I mentioned before, your house where you live, your primary home, doesn't count. Your retirement also doesn't count on the FAFSA. However, on the FAFSA form, let's say that you have in total $25,000 of assets, just to use an example. And you put on the FAFSA form, I have $25,000 in checking or savings or some investment. What will happen is the FAFSA form, as I mentioned before, reduced their parent asset protection allowance from $20,000 down to roughly $10,000. So what happens is you put your $25,000 on the FAFSA, they will back out $10,000. The $15,000 remaining, they will assess at a rate of 5.6%. So you start thinking, okay, the student's money counts at 20%. The parent's money counts at 5.6%. Things you may want to do before you fill out these forms. Every one of these forms, by the way, is going to ask you, how much do you have in checking and savings as of today? How much do you have in investments as of today? So everything is as the day you're filling out these forms. Now, part number 4, parents' income. It's a sliding scale. The more you make, the more they want you to contribute towards the cost of college. The way it works is everyone wants to know in the 20s, the 30s, they want 40% of our income. An easy kind of rough draft kind of figuring out way for yourselves to kind of figure it out quickly in your own mind is, and by the way, when they ask for income, they ask for adjusted gross income. Now, when it comes to adjusted gross incomes of $50,000 to $200,000, that range, $50K to $200K, they want you to pay 22% of your income towards the cost of college. So at $100,000, you're paying $22,000. At $200,000, you're paying $44,000. Once you get to the $200,000 level of income, that's when the percentages start going up higher. That's kind of the way it works, basically, for most of you here. Now, they take these 4 parts together, and that's how they come up with your expected family contribution. Now, the easiest way of doing this is not to do everything the way I just did and explain to you. I do it so you understand the numbers. The easiest way of doing this is to go on to College Board and basically just use their expected family calculator, because you can also play with the numbers. What if we do an overtime situation? What if we take that extra job? What if we don't? What if we use all the students' money? What if we use all the money in our savings account? To figure out what your best case scenario is before you fill out these forms. That being said, let's talk about what happens at the end of the FAFSA form. At the end of the FAFSA form, you guys will see this page right here. It's called the confirmation screen at the end of the FAFSA. One thing that you all do is right here, well, 2 things you guys will see here. First, a little bit further down, I can't show you because obviously this is a student's FAFSA screen I took here, but a little bit further down, it will show you what your expected family contribution number is. It'll show you exactly what they think you can pay towards the cost of college the moment you submit the FAFSA. Second thing you'll see here is on the right-hand side, the first blue box there that says apply now, that box there will basically send you to the state of New Jersey. So if you're applying to any schools in New Jersey, all you need to do is click on that apply button right there, and it sends your FAFSA information right over to the state of New Jersey. That's why when I said to you guys, there's 3 forms, but I don't really count the 3rd form because you're not doing a 3rd form. All you're doing now is clicking in that box, and it transfers everything over to the state of New Jersey because the state of New Jersey got rid of their questions, okay? What happens after about 2 months of you guys doing the confirmation screen and clicking that start now, moving everything over to the state of New Jersey, you guys will get notification, typically emails, from these guys. The state of New Jersey has a program within the state of New Jersey called NJFAMS. NJFAMS is basically the group that's looking to give you guys grant money if you guys stay in the state of New Jersey and you are eligible for aid. Now, what happens is you will receive an email asking your student to create an account because of the fact that you clicked on the Apply Now button and transfer your stuff over to the state of New Jersey. Here, what you do is you create an account using the link they sent you in that email. Once you create the account for the student, you go here. This is what the screen looks like after you log in, by the way. Click on the to-do list, and it's going to show you if they need you to do anything at all. Sometimes they're going to ask you for a W-2 or a driver's license, this kind of stuff. It's very easy stuff they ask you for. In many cases, they're not going to ask you for anything, but it'll show you here on this screen here if you guys are eligible for state aid if you stayed in the state of New Jersey. Now, if you click that button, some of you here will be eligible for the max amount of state aid, which in the state of New Jersey is $13,000 in grant money. So we're talking about a lot of money now the state of New Jersey offers if you are eligible for aid and you stay in state. That being said, let's talk about the third form that some of you will have to fill out. Most of you will not have to. It's called the CSS Profile Form. The CSS Profile Form is filled out here on the College Board site. The College Board site, to log into the CSS, is very simple. You guys type in, basically you log in using your student's SAT account. So your student's SAT account, PSAT account, AP account are all the same group. It's all the same account. It's all College Board. It's the same account you use to fill out the CSS Profile Form. Now, most colleges do not require the CSS. In the state of New Jersey, only one college, Stevens Institute of Technology, wants the FAFSA, the state form, and the CSS profile. No other college here wants it. Now, to find out, does your college, the schools you're looking at, want the CSS in addition to FAFSA? Very simple. Call the school's financial aid office. The reason I say call their office is because every year the schools change who wants it and who doesn't want it. This year, Ithaca doesn't want it. Last year, Ithaca wanted it. 3 years ago, TCNJ wanted it. Now they no longer want it. So every year they change. The best way to make sure you're not missing anything is to call their financial aid office and ask. Now, when you're filling out the CSS profile, it's vastly different than the FAFSA form. Right off the bat, the FAFSA form has 100 questions. The CSS profile has 400 starting questions. So obviously a lot more in depth than the FAFSA form. In addition, the FAFSA form is free. The CSS profile, just to do one school, will cost you $25, and they have additional fees for every additional school you guys add to the form. Basically $16 for each additional school that you want to be added to this. In addition to that, the reason the CSS has so many more questions is because they will ask you about your primary home. They will ask you about your retirement assets. They will ask you in some cases what kind of car you drive. It goes very in depth. I tell parents all the time, if you get overwhelmed with either one of the forms, very simple, hit the save button. Do not rush. This is not a race. You have plenty of time. Hit the save button, get the answer, or take a break and come back. I've had accountants who basically do paperwork all day long about tax stuff tell me they've taken 4 and 5 hours doing this. So obviously, if you're somebody who's never done accounting stuff or never done financial aid forms before, if it takes you a while, it's perfectly fine. Do not rush. If you have to get the form in and you need a number and you don't know what to put for a number, it's very simple. You put 0. 0 is the best number you can put if you don't have an answer and you have to get the form in. It's better to be wrong with 0 than to create a number in your mind that's incorrect because the college is not going to tell you it's incorrect, okay? That being said, let's talk about the net price calculators because now we've gone through all the forms of what you guys will be filling out. So when it comes to the net price calculators, the reason I tell you guys these things are so important is because they allow you to know specifically what every single college is willing to give you in grants and scholarships specifically for your family situation for that one student going off to college. The way to think of it is this. The expected family contribution calculators I told you about on College Board give you a broad number of what every school thinks you can pay towards college. The net price calculators give you a specific number. And the way to find the net price calculators is very simple. You just Google the school's name and the term net price calculator. It's that simple. Just to show you guys how simple it was, I actually did the same thing, which I'll show you in the next slide. And by the way, the reason I have College Board on here is because most of the College Board, most of the EFs, the net price calculators are on College Board. That being said, what I did was I just Googled Harvard Net Price Calculator, and voila, it popped up on Google, and I just jumped on there. They only had 16 or 17 questions. It's very easy, okay? They asked a couple of easy questions like, what do you make? What do you have in the bank? How many students do you have, etc. So I plugged in that we are a family of 4, that I have 1 student going off to college, that we make $100,000 a year, and we have $50,000 in investments outside of retirement. Harvard came back and said, based on your situation, we're going to give you $64,841 of grant money. Obviously, very, very generous here. Now, I know it says scholarships, but it's just a terminology difference. There's no such thing as scholarships at the Ivy League level. But it's all free money at the end of the day. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, that's great, Ed, but how many of us are really going to get our student into Harvard? You know, how is this helpful? The reason this is helpful, and the reason I use Harvard for this example, is because everyone knows Harvard. That's why I use them for their net price calculator. The reality is, you don't have to be looking at crazy difficult schools to get into, like Harvard-level colleges, to get schools to give you a ton of money. Schools like Case Western, Loyola, Gettysburg, Franklin and Marshall, Providence, Tulane are almost as generous, in some cases as generous as this. Every liberal arts school, from Williams all the way down, all of them typically meet 90 to 100% of need, as well as schools like Seton Hall, Monmouth, Fairleigh Dickinson, Rider, Quinnipiac. All these schools are extremely generous and are not impossible to get into. Now, obviously, you would know they're very generous if they're on your list if you did the net price calculator. Because once again, the net price calculator for many schools will show you how much grant money they'll give you based on your financial situation, as well as how much scholarship money they'll give your student based on their academic situation. So the net price calculators are keys for all of you guys, especially the parents considering early decision and are scared to be locked in. It's great to do the net price calculator, and also kind of in a way for the restricted early students who are giving up the opportunity of doing EA somewhere else. Obviously, if you find the school is generous and you talk to guidance and you've done Naviance and you figured out yourselves, this is a school you want to go to, then doing restricted early action, if you know they're generous, obviously adds another layer of comfort to being able to go in this direction. That being said, let's talk about the marital status. Once again, on the FAFSA form, the moment you guys indicate that you are divorced or separated, it will ask you which parent's information basically do you want to use. That, once again, is going away next year. So for this year's taxes, you guys have to talk about who's going to be claiming the student, because that person's income will be used next FAFSA year. In addition, if you are remarried, stepmoms, stepdads, your information goes on the FAFSA. Regardless if you adopted the student or not, the financial aid forms do not care. In addition to that, if you're looking at a CSS profile school and you are divorced or separated, most of the CSS profile schools will ask you guys for both biological parents' financial information, which means if you're divorced or separated, you're filling out 2 forms, so that basically means 800 total questions. Once again, if you get overwhelmed, hit the save button. Do not rush. In addition to that, if you're asked both biological parents to fill out 2 CSSs and you're both remarried, all 4 parents' financial information must go on the form. Both biological parents and both step parents, unfortunately, for CSS profile schools. That being said, let's talk about, once again, the multiple students in college being taken away. Now, it's still here for this year. So for senior parents, if you have 2 students going off to college next year, you will get the FAFSA discount where they divide the EFC in half. But starting after next academic year, so basically next FAFSA for next academic year, they're taking it away. And this is why I'm telling parents not to worry as much as everyone is freaking out. Right off the bat, there's 3 people that give you financial assistance: the federal government, the state, and the college. And it goes in that direction about who is the most generous from a broad perspective, because the government gives money to every college. From an individual perspective, i.e. like your family situation, it's the college, the state, then the federal government as far as who's the most generous. Now, the people that are getting rid of the discount are not the college. It's not the state. It's the federal government, which basically means of all 3 entities, the ones that give the most money to you, the schools, most of them are not following this format. So if you're looking at highly expensive schools, the one thing I would be doing with every financial aid office I'm dealing with is asking them, how are you handling next year's multiple student discount being taken away by the FAFSA? A lot of high-level schools, and when I mean high level, I mean high cost. I don't mean like top-tier schools. I mean the 65,000 and above schools. Many of them have already come out and said, we're not going to follow the format. We're still going to give a discount for multiple students in college. This is what I'm saying to you guys. I would not be worried about so much the federal government getting rid of it, because just to give you an example, if your income is $60,000 or more, and you have one student going to college, so 60 grand of income with one student, you're already over the threshold of any federal aid other than loans. So you can't get any grant money anyways. That's why I'm saying it won't affect many of you out there, okay? That being said, let's talk about the multiple errors made on these forms and the biggest ones to avoid. Right off the bat, the 4 biggest errors that basically delay and mess up everything are the first name, last name, social, and birthday. First and last name, no nicknames. So Edward is Edward. It's not Ed or Eddie. As well as if your name is Elizabeth, it's not Beth, and so on and so forth. Also, with the name, if you do not know your legal name, I know it sounds kind of ridiculous that you don't know your legal name, but if you're remarried, did you legally change your name on your Social Security card? The Social Security name is what they want on these forms. The last 2 issues, the birthday and the social, these are the most critical errors you cannot make. The birthday and the social, if you make these errors, in some cases, it will make you do the forms all over again, even if it's just those 2 errors. Because once you submit the forms are locked in with first name, last name, social, and birthday connected to the Social Security network. So if last name, birthday, social, etc. don't match, they will not process your form. Now you can, in some cases, change some of these errors. But these 4, in some cases, in many cases, they'll make you do the whole thing all over again right from the beginning, which obviously you don't want to do. Now that being said, let's talk about social media. Now when it comes to social media, this is really more about the students than the parents. For students, or I guess for parents too, if you guys are posting or you know your students are posting anything that anyone at all in any fashion would find even mildly offensive, you have to make it private. Or if your student's posting stuff on there like pranks or stuff like that, and it seems to be immature, you got to make it private. Reason being is that schools are going on social media accounts. They are going on TikTok, they are going on Instagram, they are going on Facebook, they are checking students' names. And the reason they're doing this, some of them will tell you even they're doing this through the admissions office, but typically they tell you they're doing it to get a better perspective of the student. They're not doing this to get a better perspective. They're doing this to find reasons to reject students. Let me give you an example. I'm not saying NYU does this, but just give you an example. NYU received basically 100,000 applications last year. 100,000 applications. NYU can't bring in 100,000 students. Obviously, when the SAT, ACT got taken away, it eliminated that barrier, and it flooded them with applications. And the funny thing is, at the 100,000 mark, NYU wasn't even the school that had the most applications. They were like the 8th most. There was actually schools that had 110, 115,000, like astronomical numbers. So what easier way for me as an admissions officer on the train, riding into New York City, riding into, NYU, what is easier? Me reading your supplemental NYU essay, your main essay, your resume, and everything else, or just going on TikTok for 45 seconds and seeing what you guys are posting, or Twitter and seeing what you guys are sharing? It's really that important that if you guys are doing anything that's immature or offensive in any way, you got to make it private. I know you don't want to hear this, but the reality is the world is very connected. And we've all been on all kinds of social media and platforms like this, obviously because of the pandemic. You don't want 4 years of busting your butt in high school, the grades, the APs, the IBs, and everything else you guys have done just to be thrown away for some 45-second TikTok or some Twitter, something you guys pushed along, or whatever it may be. And you will never know, to be honest with you, why you were rejected, because admissions never tells you why you were rejected. But you would never know if it was something that you just randomly posted on there that got you thrown out of, or maybe not thrown out of, but not accepted to your dream college, to be honest with you. Okay. That being said, let's talk about avoiding scams, frauds, and everything else. Now, if you want to avoid scams and frauds, the best thing you can do is go to this website here. One thing that U.S. Department of Education does extremely well is helps parents avoid scams and frauds. On this page, down below, you see there as the link, it's a link to the U.S. Department of Education's page where it tells parents what kind of scams are out there and how to avoid them. Scholarship scams, grant scams, loan scams, identity scams, all kinds of scams. It's a great website to utilize to help you guys avoid these situations. It's about a 20, 25-minute read, so it's not that long, so it's pretty easy to do. Second thing you guys can do, if you follow our Facebook page, Anytime I get notified of a scam, like last year we got notified of 3 different scams, I posted within basically 5 minutes of hearing them on the Facebook page. And thankfully, good thing about some social media stuff is it kind of just went out there and blew up. And all the parents started avoiding it. One was a Rutgers scam where somebody was pretending to be Rutgers and said, if you don't pay us money, we're going to kick your student out kind of thing. And they always do it on a Friday, so you can't call Rutgers and get anyone on the phone. So parents were freaking out. I must have had, I don't know, a dozen phone calls and emails and texts on a Friday night. And I knew instantly it was a scam because I've worked at a college, and I know no college is ever going to call you if you owe them money. What they do is they deactivate your student's food card, they deactivate their room key, and they tell the professor, do not let them into class. That's how they deal with not payment of your bill, not calling you. So we posted it. It went out there. So if you want to follow us on Facebook, Principia Prep, I do post a lot of other stuff, but the fraud stuff I post there as quickly as possible. That being said, third place you can go is on our YouTube channel. We do have multiple videos, even a video about this site here, how it works, to different scams and everything else, to basically inform you guys of what to avoid. So if you're more of a visual person, video kind of person, you can obviously go on the YouTube channel. That being said, after you guys get accepted to the colleges, you guys will start receiving the financial aid award letters. The financial aid award letters are essentially the starting point for being able to appeal and ask for more money from the college. Until you have an award letter, you cannot appeal because you don't know what you're appealing. But once you do have the award letter with the scholarships and the grants and the loans and the work programs, you can start appealing. So let's talk about appeals. Right off the bat, there's 2 types of appeals. Most people put them together, but that's not the way it works. 2 types of appeals. You have a scholarship appeal and you have a grant appeal. The scholarship appeal is handled by the admissions office because they handle all scholarship stuff. If you guys want to do appeals, everyone should appeal scholarship money because nothing bad can happen. Worst thing they can say to you is, we're not going to give you any more. Best thing is, they're going to give you more. 3 things happen if you appeal a grant. 1, they give you more money. You won. 2, they say, you got what you got. We reviewed it. We're not going to give you any more. We're done. You won. The reason you won number 2 is because 3, they can take away all your grant money. If you don't know what you're doing and you're doing an appeal, asking for more grant money of a college, very simple. On the screen, I made a video of when you appeal, when you don't appeal, when you don't even think about appealing. Okay? I even explained in the video how to appeal properly for more grant money from a college. Reason being, I have seen families that have been told you always appeal, good, bad, or indifferent. The person who told them that obviously didn't have the right information, because when you appeal a grant, what happens is you take away a machine out of the way and say to the school, please bring a human being in to take care of my appeal. That human being is going to ask for 2020 taxes, 21 taxes, a verification form, a household form, in some cases, an asset verification form, in addition to a detailed statement explaining what the situation is. So you're giving that person everything from 2 years to figure out basically 2 things or 3 things. Should I give you more money? Should I keep the money the same? Or should I take away money? That's what you're really doing when you're doing an appeal. So if you have no idea what you're doing, you don't have to hire anybody. I have the video here telling you how to do it. All for free. Just go on YouTube and watch it. Because what happens often, I get these phone calls, by the way, all the time, and text messages and emails. Hey, Ed, can we talk? I have an issue. I ask, what's your issue? Well, I didn't appeal. I lost financial aid. Can you help us? No. You brought the appeal into place without asking anyone or watching the video or asking any other person who's worked in financial aid. Does it make sense to do an appeal? Because if they find something on the taxes you forgot, or something you omitted, or you put in the wrong section, these things will cost you financial aid. So if you don't know what you're doing, very simple, just watch the videos. That being said, let's talk about student loans. The way student loans work is very simple. The moment you guys do the Fafsa form, every one of your students will be offered a federal direct loan, all of them. All you need to be doing is basically filling out the Fafsa form, and your student need to be breathing. That's it. And your student will be getting a student loan. That's the way they work. They don't care about credit score. They don't care if you're working. They don't care if you've gone through foreclosure. They don't care. Your student will be offered a $5,500 federal loan the moment the Fafsa goes in. That's why every financial aid office and admissions office knows if you ask about financial aid, the answer is always yes, you will get financial aid. That being said, the financial aid or the direct loan breaks into 2 categories. You have subsidized portion and unsubsidized portion. The subsidized portion of the federal loan is typically $3,500. The unsubsidized portion is usually $2,000. So as a total, as a freshman, you'll get $5,500. You can elect to say, I want the subsidized portion, which means the government's paying my interest while I'm in school, up to 6 months after I graduate, and say no to the interest-bearing loan that has the interest growing. Or you can say yes to both or decline both. It's up to you, but they must offer it to you. Second place I'd be looking if I need loan help is the private lenders. The College Ave, the Sallie Mae, the Discover, the Citizens. There's about 25 different lenders out there, by the way. And the reason you're looking at private lenders first is because private lenders are still at the 1 to 1.25% interest rate, extremely cheap. Now, you will not be doing any loan stuff for senior parents until June. The reason you don't do anything until June is because June is when the bills come out, so you don't even know what you're taking out yet, so you can't do loan stuff until June when you have the bill. The second place to go for additional loan funds is the New Jersey class loan. The New Jersey class loan starts interest rates at 3%, very cheap, very affordable, very aggressive if you think about it from the historical levels of where student loans typically are around 6 and above. So NJ class, second place I go. Third place I'm going is the Parent Plus loan through the federal government. It's a good loan. It has the lowest credit requirement of all the lenders. So if you have any credit issues, I would look to go there. But the problem is they have an interest rate over 6% starting off with an origination fee over 4.4%. So you're basically paying $440 in fees for every $10,000 you take out. That's a huge amount for a 6% loan, okay? That being said, here is our newsletter. Our newsletter goes out every month for juniors and seniors. If you want the newsletter, very simple. I tell you guys in the newsletter, by the way, what you need to do for admissions, financial aid, testing. I talk about everything. If you want the newsletter, in the top right-hand corner of every slide is our email. I'll also give you my email and contact information in about another 2 pages because we're almost done. So just email me. Let me know what grade level your student is in, and I'll send you the newsletter. Also, if you need help with the loan stuff, just email me in June. I put together in the summertime the top 5 lenders based on interest rates, and I just send that to everyone who wants it. All that being said, all I ask you guys for this entire night, all the presentation stuff we do and all the help I give you guys, is if everyone can go on the YouTube channel and press the play all button. This is what I ask everyone to do. The more money you guys can get in here, the better. And the way it works is this. For junior families, for sophomore parents who are thinking, well, this is for the seniors, correct. But this is the introductory year we're doing this. If we can make this successful for this year, I'm going to continue doing this every single year going forward. So for the sophomores and the junior parents on the call, if you guys help out and make this as big as possible, there'll be money there for you guys next year as well. That being said, here are the important websites you guys should be utilizing. FAFSA and College Board, these are the 2 sites to be using for the financial aid forms, as well as for scholarship searches. College Board, FinAid, and CapEx are my top 3 I like the most as far as the free scholarships out there for private private scholarship searches, as well as, once again, we do have the YouTube channel. I do have videos on the YouTube channel about everything, about establishing in-state residency, about early action versus early decision in the world of financial aid. I literally post videos on there about everything. I have the FAFSA guides, I have the student ID guides, I have everything on there. So you guys can obviously watch the videos to help yourselves as well. In addition, you can also follow us on Facebook. We do post a lot of stuff on there as well. And that being said, here is our contact information, my email and my cell phone. If you want to get a hold of me, if you need help, if you have questions, just text me. Text message is the easiest and fastest way to reach me. I respond back to text messages within 24 hours. Email, typically I'm about 2 to 3 days behind on email. I do not answer the phone. So if you call, it will literally go to voicemail. I don't answer. I don't have time to answer. Between the presentations, and by the way, you guys are presentation 2 tonight. I have another one at 8:30, okay? I do 80 high schools a year, which means if I typically see 100 families per high school, that's 8,000 families texting and emailing me. So when the phone rings, it just rings all day long. It does not get picked up. But if you text me, I will answer your question within 24 hours. And after I answer your question, you will all get the same comment. Thank you. If you have any other additional questions, please let me know. By the way, I have a YouTube video channel, essentially. Can you please go on there and press the play all button and watch the videos? It helps our scholarship fund. I've been sending that text message to whoever texts me for the last 4 months, if it's college related or not, to be honest with you.